Hey guys, Sean Hammond with PremierGuitar.com. We are in Nashville at SummerNAMM 2016 talking to Stephen Fryette, Fryette Amplification, and the recently relaunched Sound City. Stephen, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming over.
Yeah, so you're our first appointment of the day, so we're both like, wow, this is starting again.
Right. The coffee's starting to kick in, and we're trying to figure out what planet we're on and all that.
We're doing another NAMM. So you guys have really exciting news. Sound City, obviously a very storied brand going back decades. For people who know the name, they probably don't know the whole history. Do you want to give, I mean, not the whole history, but talk about how you guys got involved with this, what got you into it, you know, what it means for you guys?
Well, when we got the opportunity to sort of take over stewardship of the brand, it was kind of a surprise to me. Neil found out that we could take part in that and actually end up owning the trademark and figuring out a way to go forward with it. And it was then when I started really finding out how deep and rich the history was.
Because the originals were like designed by Dave Reeves, Hi-Watt fame and all that.
He had designed them for Sound City, and there's a lot of speculation about how that story actually played out, but he did have a key role in creating the first Sound City amps that were used by The Who, and the amps that Pete Townsend introduced to Hendrix when he first went to England in '67. And so what I did is I went back and looked at the original amp that there's videos and photographs of Hendrix playing, called the Sound City 100 model. Had 4 inputs. It's also known as the CP105 and the SC105, and had a very cool platform, but the volume thing wasn't practical. But being a David Reeves sort of aficionado and he was a mentor of mine and all that, I wanted to stay true to the DNA and the platform as much as possible, but make it, you know, bring it forward, evolve it to the point where modern players could experience the sound. And it really is a unique sound, and it's a very big footprint kind of a sound. It's not an overdrive amp. It's not a gain monster. It's just
pure brawn.
It's just pure. That's a beautiful way to put it. It's pure brawn. It's that you approach it with confidence, or you get eaten
screwed.
Yeah.
Now, when you mentioned a minute ago, like the volume situation, it's not just that they're 100 or 150 watt or whatever amps. It's like
it's almost
the level of like military spec wiring, at least in the originals and all that, was like made them like almost twice as loud as the typical 100 watt that we think of, right?
Well, interestingly, the whole military spec thing has become the conversation, and it's practically irrelevant to the behavior and the performance of the amplifiers, which has always been what we've been about as Fryette, is performance over, you know, the catchphrases that everybody uses for producing amps. It's point to point, it's Teflon this, it's blah 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 that, and what it's really about is performance, like it originally was. Performance and accessibility. Sound City was about, you know, reaching players. They did a lot of artist relation stuff, and they were very aggressive with their marketing. So the stuff got around, and a lot of well-known players play them at one point or another in their career. But as far as performance, they just have this sound quality that predates the Hi-Watt vibe. They're more open, and the onset of distortion when you crank them is smoother, and it's just a musical thing. So I tried to bring out as much of that as possible in the new iteration of it. So it hasn't anything to do with construction as much as it has to do with the design of the circuit, how the way the power amp behaves and performs, and what happens to it as you crank it up. So that's why it doesn't make so much difference that it's a 50 or 100, because you're not really trying to play loud anymore. You're just, the 50 watt one has a personality and the 100 watt one has a personality. And you either just rock out and, you know, ride them naked, or you use the power attenuator to rein them in a little bit, and then you can get the more expressive subtleties out of them.
Right. So even though Sound City is lesser known in the grand scheme of things from the last 40, 50 years of rock and roll amplification, there is a small but very cult-like following of Dave Reeves' designs from back then, and there have been several outfits over the years trying to capture the same vibe. So tell us how you guys approached it. From what I understand, a lot of it is massive transformers and stuff like that. Tell us how you guys approached it.
That's a great question, because the approach is everything. Not trying to recreate something that never existed in the first place. And secondly, I went from the approach that David Reeves was designing towards to accomplish a particular goal at that time.
What's that goal? What do you feel like that goal?
Which was players playing clean. The amps were clean. Hendrix played clean. Townsend played clean. They were all looking for bigger, louder, clean amps that were reliable on the road. And then they used distortion pedals and wahs to affect the sound. But basically, PAs didn't exist, in the way they do today. So you basically had multiple amps on stage, not to show off, but because you needed coverage on stage so you could hear yourself. They didn't have in-ear monitors or side fills and like very sophisticated on-stage monitoring systems. So you had to be able to hear yourself anywhere on stage and get sustain and get feedback. So you needed clean headroom, and then you needed reliability, and that's what the amps were about then, and that's what this amp is about now. I followed that. We talked before, a couple of years ago, about the ether and splitting the path, and this is the same thing. We went back to the beginning of the evolution of big amplifiers, and they were this way for a reason, and we're not going to go just make it another overdrive amp that people can play in their bedroom. We're going to go the route that this is the way this amplifier would have organically developed had Sound City continued in production over time. What would they have done? What would David Reeves be doing today if he designed something, not 70 years ago when he designed the amps that he designed, or 50 years ago, or whatever?
So take us inside the amp, because that's what people are wondering about. Is it circuit board?
PCB-based amp. It uses really high-quality headboard transformers. They're not their stock transformers. They're specially built for this project. They're not exact copies of Partridge transformers, although they're built like Partridge transformers, but they're spec'd out to the original behavior of the original Sound City. So for the guys that are the legacy Sound City, aficionados, there's a lot in there for them to like, because the performance is there, and the power amp design and the basic preamp structure is all in there. All I did was refine it for the modern day player, so you could go into a club and play it and have people go, that is the most amazing expressive sound I've heard in a long, long time. And the speakers are part of that too, because we worked with Fane to reproduce the original Sound City power speaker, which is what are used in the cabinets. And
is it one of these down here?
There's a variation of the F70, which is a 70-watt ceramic speaker, but it's built very similarly to the original cast frames that were in the Sound Cities. And then Sound City cabs had a vented port on the back, which these have. Rear-ported cabs have this nice omnidirectional sort of spread on the low end, so it makes it really fun to play when you're standing close to it, which is cool in a small club. You can hear yourself, and you can hear all the nuance close to the speaker, which is hard to do when the speaker is projecting. So the sound post in the cabinet causes the cabinet to be beamy, and I came up with this V-brace design and patented a few years ago for the Deliverance cab, which gives it this more omnidirectional thing. But the Deliverance cab is front-loaded, and the Sound City cab is rear-loaded, so it's got a more traditional sound because of the way the speakers are mounted, but it's got the V-brace, which gives it that omnidirectional feel and the nice bottom-end snappiness. So we basically just applied things that I've learned over the years in building all these amps and tried to just refine and maximize what the essence of the original Sound City was.
Nice. So let's go back to the heads a lot. There's two models, a 50 watt and a 100 watt, both at EL34 driven, and single channel.
They are single channel amps with a bright volume, a brilliant volume, and a normal volume. So the brilliant volume has a little less bass response and more expressive upper mids, and The normal volume has more bass and more, actually a little bit of more very top end. Usually the dark channel or the bass channel on a 4-holer is heavy on the bass and weak on the top. So when you jack the channels together, you use the dark channel to bring up some low end punch. What often happens is it gets muddy or flubby. So I put a little bit of sparkle on the very top to basically bring the low and the top around the brilliant channel, which is more mid-focus. So you can actually blend the two a little more effectively to get really woody guitar sound at lower volumes. The master volume, like I said, is not a traditional drive the preamp and turn it down, keep the power amp clean. It's actually like an original master volume, this amp was originally a 4-volume amp. And the master volume was used to turn all 4 volumes up and down. So it's still that same way. It's 2 volumes, and all the variations of the tone of the 4 inputs are combined into 2, and then they're controlled by the master volume. You still have to turn the master volume up to get the power amp to overdrive, which is where all the sweetness is. And then it's got the original, a variation of the original SC100 tone stack, which is different than the high watt tone stack. It's sort of pre-high watt, and it actually originally didn't have a middle control. So I just took that topology and incorporated the mid control on it so that you could get a little bit more of that later bark quality. And then the presence control is very subtle, like they were on the original Sound Cities. It does, it's not like a lot of top end. It's just a very subtle sparkle. And the speakers bring out the upper mids really nicely. So the presence control and the speaker behavior interact really well. And that's where in my designs, I don't try to get everything out of one particular aspect of the design. I try to use all the different aspects of the design to work together to bring out all the harmonics and the subtleties of the sound, and that's true here as well.
Notice you have the 2 of the inputs jumpered here. Do you want to explain what that brings to the table?
It's just simply a nod to the era. I could have done it with 1 input, but there's a thing about jacking the channels together. There's just a thing about it.
It's hotter.
You can make it hotter, but it actually, by having the signal go into one jack through a couple of mixing resistors and then out and then into another jack through another couple of mixing resistors, it actually uses the cable capacitance of the jumper
mellow it a little bit.
So when you plug straight into the bright channel, it's a little brighter. If you jack it, the bright channel softens a little bit, and the normal channel brings in this heft. So you can use them for gain, a certain amount of gain increase. There's just voices in there. They're like 2 singers, and you're just mixing the 2.
Sounds really good, man. And then I saw the master at like 1. I was like, that's not that loud, but you're using the power station to attenuate it, right? Yeah, that's loud. Sounds really good. Glassy, powerful.
Yeah.
Around back, is it pretty much standard for the era that inspired all this? Just speaker jacks and power outlet and all that? So
Baltic birch cabinet with the original grill cloth weave that we've had. There's copies of this that are on the market, but this is the actual original weave style. It's slightly different. The color is slightly different. It isn't tinted like the commonly available grill cloth that you see that looks like this. This is specially made to get the color right and get the weave tight enough so that it's a very heavy cloth. It's a very heavy weave, and it tends to filter out some of the top end too. So there's a sonic component to that as well.
So how much are the heads and the cabs going for? Because I think you have a 212 too.
This is the great part of this, because the head is $24.95 for the 100, and the 50,
Street or list or
the street price, and the 50 is $19.95.
And then you got the 412 cab and a 212.
That's right. That's right. And the 412 is $11.99, and the 212 is $9.99.
Awesome. Why don't you tell people where they can go online to find out more about all the new Sound City stuff?
We're actually officially launching the Sound City website today. It's www.soundcityamp, not plural, soundcityamp.com. And we've also got a Sound City Facebook page, and that's actually starting to get built. So it'll be a couple of days before the contact feed through for the email information is available, but that's all being built as we speak right now. We're just officially launching it worldwide at this show.
Awesome.
Start shipping in about 8-10 weeks.
Sweet. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Have a good show, man. Thanks for joining us, guys. This is Sean Hammond for PremierGuitar.com.